All right.
And I'm just relocating rooms, so that's why I'm going to turn my camera off in just a second. But I'm listening. Okay.
Okay. Welcome to the Housing Commission's August 4th, 2021 regular meeting. This is a teleconference meeting with Housing Commission members, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. So I will call the meeting to order at 6:34 p.m. and would like to first acknowledge that I'm sitting on Ramaytush Ohlone land, and maybe many of you are as well, and then proceed to a roll call. I believe we have Commissioner Bigelow, Chair Grove, Vice Chair Horst, Commissioner Leach, Commissioner Merriman, Commissioner Nguyen, and Commissioner Pimentel with us. Nobody's absent. And we have Deputy Community Development Director Rhonda Kaufman, Assistant Community Development Director Deanna Chow, Management Analyst 2 Mike Noche, and Senior Planner Calvin Chan. And we have Jeff Bradley and Sung Kwan from the M Group. Mike Noche, would you please provide instructions to the Housing Commission and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Housing Commission. Welcome everyone to the August 4th meeting of the Housing Commission. At this time, we ask that members of the Housing Commission please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage cameras and microphones to make presentations and respond to members of the Housing Commission. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment after the chair calls for the public comment item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature, or via telephone, please push *9 to raise your hand to speak. I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide public comment to the Housing Commission. And that concludes my instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So under public comments, the public may address the Housing Commission on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the Housing Commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The Housing Commission cannot act on items that are not listed on the agenda, and therefore the Housing Commission cannot respond to non-agenda items brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Mike, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just as a reminder for those who just joined us, for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, you can use the raised hand feature, or if you're dialing in, *9, and I will have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide public comment to the Housing Commission. And I'll just give it a second. And I do not see any public comments, so I will return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. So under regular business, the Housing Commission receives informational presentations in addition to considering policy matters and administrative actions. Are there any clarifying questions from the Housing Commission on item D1, which is to approve the minutes from the Housing Commission meeting of July 7th, 2021, before taking public comment on the item? Okay, seeing none. Mike, do we have any public comment on the minutes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please use the raised hand feature or *9 if you are dialing in to provide your public comment on the item D1 to the Housing Commission. And I do not see any hands raised, so I will return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion and a second for the stated motion? And the motion is to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Who was that? Heather? Commissioner Leach? Okay, so I like to do the voice vote, but we are going to do a roll call vote because that's the way we should be doing it. So Mike, please help us with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will call each commissioner's name and please provide your vote. Commissioner Bigelow.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Leach.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Merriman.
Dane.
Thank you. Commissioner Nguyen.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Pimentel.
Abstain.
Thank you. Vice Chair Horst.
Aye.
And Chair Grove.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0-2 with Commissioners Merriman and Pimentel abstaining.
Okay. So item D2 is to review and provide feedback on potential land use strategies to meet the regional housing needs allocation, which we will refer to as RHNA, for the 2023 to 2031 planning period as part of the housing element update. Assistant Community Development Director Deanna Chow will introduce item D2.
Hi, good evening, Chair Grove and members of the Housing Commission. I'm Deanna Chow, I'm the Assistant Community Development Director. I'm joined this evening by, as you noted earlier, Cal Chan, Senior Planner, and Jeff Bradley and Sung Kwan of the M Group, who is assisting the city in preparing our city's housing element, environmental justice element, and safety element update. So this evening we are here. Thank you for having us to conduct a study session, as Chair Grove mentioned, to receive feedback on potential land use strategies to help the city meet its RHNA allocation for the 2023-2031 planning period. So as a study session, there are no actions to be taken this evening. It's purely to receive feedback that will help inform the conversation around what strategies we want to use to help meet our approximately 3,000 housing units that have been identified by the state. So we can go ahead and jump right in. So Jeff Bradley from the M Group will lead with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see the title slide there? Great, thank you. So as mentioned by the chair and by the assistant director, we're going to cover an overview of the regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA, as we like to shorten that. An overview of fair housing and the principles surrounding the new affirmatively furthering fair housing requirements here in California. Potential land use and housing strategies for how we're just initially framing this, of how we're going to solve this this challenge and this opportunity to provide additional housing within the community, and then also next steps in this process. So the Bay Area wide RHNA has been increased by about 235% as compared to the previous cycle, which is known as the fifth RHNA cycle. And here in Menlo Park, the RHNA has increased actually almost 4.5 times. So a pretty substantial increase from less than 700 units under the previous housing element, which is the current housing element in effect. And it, oh, I'm sorry. So this, I was going to give a quick bit of progress on the existing housing element and the amount of housing that's been built under it before we jump into the increased RHNA. So as you can see here, the 655 units was the target set by ABAG and adopted by the city through its housing element that's currently in effect. And you can see on the right, the percent complete, the very low income category, the low income category was in the 64 to 62% range. And this is information through the end of 2020. So there's still a couple more years where these numbers can continue to improve. So it's pretty much on track where we're at 6 years into this 8-year cycle. However, in the moderate income category, you can see we have that in red because that's a very low percentage. It's only 8%. And so obviously there's a lot of room for thinking about why that is and what we can do to improve it going forward. And then in the above moderate category, which is also known as market rate housing, the city has exceeded its allocation set by the RHNA substantially, almost 800% increase. And so overall, the city has provided over 1,400 units through issued building permits, where 655 was the goal. And of course, we're planning for housing for people at all income levels. And so here in Silicon Valley, we have extremely high average median incomes, area median incomes, which is known as AMI. And that really establishes the benchmark for how these income categories are set. And you can see there's quite a range from a single person household who's earning 30% or less of the area median income. They're earning $38,000, over $38,000 per year. So that's substantially more than minimum wage. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have a large family of a moderate income, still eligible for affordable housing programs at that moderate income level, but they could be earning nearly $240,000 a year. And because of that large family size, that those income brackets step up like that. So it's a very, very wide range of people, and it encompasses everyone in the community. So going to the 6th cycle RHNA that we've read and heard a lot about in the news, and the numbers coming down and how different cities and counties respond to that because of that increase of over 200% within the region, which then as it hits individual cities can be even a more drastic increase. So Menlo Park's RHNA, as the commission probably knows, went from the 655 that we were just looking at the progress on up to this number closer to 3,000. And these are technically draft numbers right now that will not be adopted until later towards the end of this year as the appeals process plays out and they become finalized. But for planning purposes, we really have to accept them as pretty darn close to what they're going to wind up with, because we need to move forward expeditiously to plan for this. So you can see in what will be this new 6th cycle, the number of units increases substantially per income level. Very low goes from 233 units to 740. The low income units go from 129 to over 400. The moderate income units go from 143 to almost 500. And a big jump in the market rate units from 150 all the way up to almost 1,300. So substantial increase there. And a little caveat we put around this whole discussion of what is the RHNA is under the planning statutes and directives we received from the state of California and the Housing and Community Development Department, known as HCD, they very strongly recommend a buffer of 15 to 30%, which means an increase in the RHNA of 15 to 30% for planning purposes to ensure that at every point in the planning period, there's adequate sites within each individual income category. So back in 2018, California adopted AB 686, also known as Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, which of course is another acronym, AFFH. And it requires cities to really proactively address segregated living patterns and break down barriers for fair housing for all members of the community. This map is simply based on census data and shows the racially segregated pattern to housing within the city that we see throughout communities within our state and our nation. However, what's different this time is under this new 8-year plan for housing, we must show adequate new housing opportunities in high resource areas with good access to schools, jobs, and services. That wasn't a requirement under previous housing elements. And a lot of that continued contributed to these continuing patterns of segregation that we find ourselves living in. Overcrowding, of course, is where more people live in a household than it was designed for. In Menlo Park, as this graph shows in the middle with the yellow bar at 16%, Hispanic households are disproportionately overcrowded. And that's a real challenge to live in those circumstances, and is a strong focus of housing policy is to address that. The cost of housing in Menlo Park as compared to the Bay Area is just about off the chart here, showing more than half of the homes are selling for more than $2 million, whereas in the Bay Area as a whole, it's less than 10% are in that price range. So it really shows you the distinct challenge of planning for affordable housing in this type of high-priced environment. The potential housing solutions we've identified to date are these 7 ideas shown here. At the center would be sites already identified in the current housing element, but not yet developed, plus sites that have active planning applications, known as pipeline projects. These can reasonably be expected to get built during the next housing period. Then it would be a wide variety of these other strategies you see here, including additional housing planned for downtown and along the El Camino Real corridor, use of religious sites, churches, temples, synagogues, encourage more ADUs within the neighborhoods, explore any new housing opportunities in single-family zones above and beyond ADUs, and identify commercial sites that would meet the technical criteria as good housing opportunity sites. And of course, any other ideas that come from the community as part of this process. So under the current housing element, a number of sites were identified as good opportunity sites, and some of them have been developed, but some of them have not been developed. And ABAG and MTC has prepared this online tool to identify the properties that have found to be still available for development. However, to recycle or reuse a site, the city has to do something proactive to the site to give it additional impetus to develop during this 8-year period we're talking about. And the main 2 tools to do that are required in order to be able to reuse the site is to increase the density and also to allow the development to occur by right, meaning no discretionary land use decision, but strictly on a ministerial basis with objective standards. We'll talk about pipeline projects for purposes of the housing element. And in this context, we're really referring to projects that have either been approved by the city, but haven't been built yet, or projects that have filed applications and haven't been approved yet, but there's some expectation that if they meet all the rules, they'll be approved. So this is a partial list of what we've identified as the largest major pipeline projects. We're continuing to work with planning staff to capture everything, including some smaller projects. But this gives you a sense of the scale of the pipeline projects. And due to the sheer amount of projects and the size of them in the Bayfront area under the Connect Menlo plan, this number gets pretty big. It's 3,200 units. Number of faith-based sites that could be considered for housing under what's known as AB 1851 allows for housing to take the place of parking, and cities are not allowed to require the parking to be replaced. This law was passed just last year. It had a real laser focus on just religious facilities and allowing up to half of the parking area to convert to housing, as long as the housing project itself is eligible for a density bonus, which means it has to have a built-in affordability component. The thinking here is that the city could sort of build on this state law and add additional incentives to give these religious facilities the means to do that for the folks that would be interested in that. All of the existing commercial properties in the city that do not currently allow residential will be considered in detail as possible candidate sites to residential or mixed-use opportunity sites. A set of criteria will be applied to determine which sites could be considered appropriate for housing under these very specific housing element requirements. This includes the likelihood that the site will redevelop within the planning period, which is only an 8-year time period. Has to be a showing that that is realistic. There should be a good proximity to transit, proximity to good schools, jobs, parks, and services to meet the new requirements under the fair housing laws and policies. That this can be an important component of providing new housing opportunities that are distributed throughout the entire community. All of the properties in the downtown and in the El Camino Real plan area that were not identified as fifth cycle sites will be considered in detail as possible residential or mixed use opportunity sites. And again, there's that filter that's applied to identify sites that meet the requirements. ADUs, of course, can provide a significant number of new units and have been documented to be naturally affordable in all 4 of the income categories due to their small size. And with the new state laws encouraging and requiring cities to approve ADUs that meet certain requirements has shown statewide a real explosion in ADU development. And as this graphic shows, there's so many different possibilities for adding ADUs over existing garages, in the backyard, the traditional backyard cottage, a simple addition off the side of a house, a conversion of a basement that may be being used just for storage, or something as simple as converting an existing garage has been made really feasible through the new state regulatory framework. HCD, which again is that Housing and Community Development in Sacramento, has published 2 different methodologies that they consider a safe harbor, meaning they will accept it at face value if you can document the production during these different years that you can use. So one concept is you look at just the last few years and you multiply that by 8, and that becomes your planning number going forward. So for us, due to the relatively low production in Menlo Park between 15 and 13, the last couple of years with a outlier, for some reason in 2019 of only 4 units, the average is just under 11 units per year. So you can multiply that out over the next 8-year planning period, and that's simply your estimate. Or you can go back to the earlier years before a lot of the new state laws were passed, 2015, 2016, 2017, take an average of that time frame and multiply it by 5. Surprisingly, they would accept as a realistic estimate of ADUs. However, given the history within the last few years of Menlo Park, I do believe that would need to be supported by a strong policy framework and a set of encouragements and inducements to really be able to rise up to that level in terms of the ADU production. And now we're going to talk about housing in single family areas. When we met with the council back in May, our kickoff meeting, this was one of the topics we talked about with them at a very high level, and just in terms of, is this something we're prepared to talk to the community about? Council said yes. So we've been out talking to the community about it. And obviously we want to talk to the Housing Commission. In terms of context, there's some laws coming around, possibly from the state, haven't been adopted yet, but some of these laws would make for some pretty significant changes in areas that are traditionally been restricted to single family uses only. And they would allow every single family parcel to be split into, and then every single family parcel to have at least one duplex placed on it. So that's kind of a context thing that's happening at the state level. And I think there's an opportunity for cities to look at that and then kind of compare what they would do at the city level in response to this issue of single family zoning being well documented now as actually an exclusionary housing tool that excludes a large number of people from vast areas of our cities, and ways to allow for more inclusive, diverse, equitable housing solutions within our established single family neighborhoods. Many cities are considering not just duplexes, but also triplexes and fourplexes within single family areas. We believe there's potential for more locally planned solutions that maybe don't treat an entire R1 area exactly the same, but create some focus on corner lots or lots over a certain threshold size, focus on areas near transit and services, and above all else, keep in mind the equity considerations of that. Really, in order to provide multifamily affordable rental housing solutions throughout our communities, there needs to be there at least should be some of robust discussion of the pros and cons of this idea. And obviously, when we look at single family zoning, we have to acknowledge that large swaths of the city are covered by single family zoning. So this map simply shows in light blue, I hope you can see that, areas allowing only residential uses. So this includes single family as well as multifamily. So, but this is and as well as mixed use. So this is basically everywhere in the city where you could conceivably build housing. No, I'm sorry, this doesn't include mixed use. This is residential only allowed. And then this is an overlay of that area showing in pink or purple areas only allowing single family residential uses. And this is nearly half the city. This is about 45% of the land area of the city is devoted to and restricted to one house on one lot, with the exception of the ADUs. And so then we just applied a very simple criteria in the analysis and said, tell us which of those parcels are between a ½ an acre and 10 acres in size. And that size range was chosen specifically because outside of this context of looking at single family neighborhoods and starting to evolve the zoning to be more inclusive, ½ an acre to 10 acres is actually the definition of is one of the criteria for a good opportunity site in all of the other categories we talked about, looking at commercial areas, looking at new housing opportunity sites downtown. That's the ideal size that we're really looking for. And so this is just a visual representation that yes, those sites in that size range also exist within the single family residential areas. So stepping back for a minute and say, okay, that's a lot of different strategies. What's the order of magnitude of how these are going to get us to the goal of planning for several thousand more units over the next 8 years? So the pipeline projects are obviously a big part of that, over 3,000 units. However, most of those are market rate, and there's not a lot of affordability. There is a lot of affordable units in there, but not enough to cover the requirements for the 6th cycle housing element that we're doing now. So there still has to be a significant effort to go above and beyond what's already been processed and in some cases approved by the city. The 5th cycle sites, the religious facilities, and the commercial sites in El Camino are all very, very variable based on the assumptions that are made in terms of density, the number of sites that would be considered good, solid housing opportunity sites. Accessory dwelling units, we have that pretty straightforward methodology from HCD. So we feel comfortable estimating that between 80 and 400 units. And again, the single family strategy is really up for discussion. That could be a really low number. It could be a much higher number depending on the decisions that are made around providing housing in those areas to create a more distributed, equitable housing pattern. In our staff report, we included some questions for the commission that I'm sure you saw. I just want to go through those quickly with some of the things we're hoping to get feedback on as part of the discussion this evening. In terms of the current housing element, it was adopted back in 2014. We've had it now for 6 or 7 years. From the commission's perspective, what is working well, what could be improved, what obviously needs to be changed. And also, as alluded to earlier, during the current housing element cycle, the total RHNA accommodation is about just less than half, 47% of the affordable units, while market rate units were up almost at 800%. Simple question, what can we do to increase affordable housing production within that context? Affirmatively furthering fair housing, new requirement. This is the first housing element. We've been given the opportunity to address this hugely important issue, but really, what can we do to actively combat racial and economic segregation, which is really the bedrock requirement of that. And a glimpse of our upcoming community engagement steps. August is a busy month. We had our first pop-up on Sunday this past weekend. We're meeting with you tonight. We have another community engagement and outreach committee meeting tomorrow night. And we have a pop-up in Belhaven this weekend. And then we're gearing up for our second community meeting on the 14th. And then, as you can see, there's a variety of other meetings that will be coming online September and October. And we'll fill in the dates as we get closer, working with our engagement committee. That concludes my presentation, and we look forward to talking with you and hopefully answering some of your questions and taking good notes and coming back for more. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to ask, what do I want to ask? I think I want to ask if there are any clarifying questions from the commission. Oh, Heather. Commissioner Leach. And then Commissioner Nguyen.
It's funny, my picture keeps moving around. So I keep unmuting. I was trying to unmute Chelsea. Sorry, Chelsea. I had a question that that I didn't see raised. I mean, that is, I'm wondering about when you were talking about the religious facilities and some very low income possibilities. I have heard, I'm wondering if the RV and the mobile unit that you see along El Camino, if there was any thought of, as one of the stopgap measures, including some sort of official strategy for helping, like maybe religious institutions or larger lots have some facilities available for people who are in RVs, campers, that kind of thing. It can be sort of it can be a good way for people to make things more affordable. And it's happening anyway. That just might be, it's not going to be a lot, but I didn't see anything about that in there.
No, that's a good point. Planning for emergency shelters and providing temporary and permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness is definitely a statutory requirement of the housing element. We've been on this agenda item, we're pretty focused on housing strategies for non-emergency housing solutions, but that is definitely that's definitely part of this effort, and we would happy to receive input on that. And I've noted down your comments. Thank you.
Chelsea.
Hi, thank you, Jeff, for a very good presentation. I do have, I want to raise some points, and I want to do a follow-up question. I think, as you know, if we have a developer comes in and they develop, a block of housing, we only can get a very small percentage of that to go to BMR. That's it. Their goal is to make money. So you can say there are 3,000 units in the pipeline. That is not going to give us what Redna is asking us to do, is to make sure that every level of incomes are accommodated, right? So
That's
in
right.
other words, we have to develop our own, because there is no way that we can rely on these developers to come in. I know when I was running for city council last year, lots of talk about USGS and SRI. The problem is that we don't have money to buy those land. If we had the money, then we have the control over what we can or cannot do. If we rely on developers, hey, 15%, that's all they can give us. And it's all only for below BMR, and that's great. But that's not going to give us the mixed income that we need to do, right? So I see your presentation. Thank you for that. And you mentioned downtown, but you did not mention specifically, which is something that I have been advocating for since last August, is to rezone the parking lots behind those shops on Santa Cruz, rezone those parking lots into mixed use housing. You talk about parking, something that we can develop. We can do multi-tier underground parking. First floor, shops, stores, movies, small movie theater, whatever. That's right there. And then the second, third, fourth, fifth would be, second and third would be for families, 2 bedrooms at least, because there are a lot of young family out there with children and they don't have a place to be. A lot of them are forced out. I know this because I go through Menlo Church, and I have met a bunch of young couples who move into the area and they have no place to go and they have to come in from far away. Okay, that's one. And the third to fourth level, we can do that modular type studios for different categories, teachers, EMT, cashiers, just single people who just have a place to live. And I don't see that. I don't hear that. And that's frustrating to me because, number one, it solved the parking issue, which we have right now. It solved the vitality issue, which we have right now, which when I was running for city council, people said there's no vitality in downtown Menlo Park. It solves the issue of the mental attitude of not in my backyard, where people don't want density right in the backyard to block the beautiful, sunlight, the flowers, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have that. Close to transportation, close to Caltrain right there, walkable, close to stores, to shops, to grocery store, close to everything. And I don't see that. And I don't know why we already own the land. We only have to pay for building it. We don't have to pay for the land, which means that's one big obstacle that we can do away with. And I do not see how all these years we cannot get over that fact and just build right there. And I don't see this. I mean, I see you said the word downtown, but you didn't specifically say parking lot. And we have so much behind each side of Santa Cruz. And if we have more space, maybe the business space would be cheaper for small business to grow because, as you know, supply and demand, less space, people can't go in, and if there's space available, it's expensive for them to lease. Make it very difficult. We do have this capability and we don't do it. And I'm asking you, knowing what you know, would you put that as part of the plan?
Thank you, Commissioner Nguyen. Excellent observations and suggestions. I do believe that a strategy around publicly owned properties is a very good strategy. And that would by definition include the downtown parking lots. And we've seen some good case studies on the peninsula where cities have actually successfully reached out to the development community and said, hey, we have this land. We want to do some affordable housing on it. We don't want to lose any parking. And so there's examples where 2 parking lots could be used, where one lot could be built as a multi-story parking garage, like you said, possibly with uses in the ground floor. And then the other lot can be used for the housing. So there's actually no loss of parking. You might actually get more parking than what you started with.
That's exactly what we want, right? Because we don't want to nickel and dime those folks who come into town and they,
So
I know tellers.
let me just do a procedural check. I loved your comment, but and I'd like to just focus on clarifying questions first. And so I think it's okay for Commissioner to ask a question, Jeff to answer it. Commissioner can ask a second question, even maybe 3, and then we'll move on to the next person. But let's get through clarifying questions first, because then comments like yours, Chelsea, will be fully informed and everybody will be on the same page. So if we could do that, that'd be great. Do you have other clarifying questions, Chelsea?
No, I just wanted to mention that we have something that I want to add to that, is that we have a lot of people coming in to work, and every 2 hours they have to find someplace else to park their car, and they can't even walk in our town. And I think it's a disservice to these folks. And I think that those folks should have free parking if we can build more parking spots. And we can do that, you know, 3 deep. Yeah. It doesn't have to be above ground. It could be underground.
Okay, thank you. Nevada.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. I had a couple clarifying questions. Can you tell me about the way that you're thinking about overcrowding? I noticed the slide said more than 1 occupant per room.
Yes, there is a very technical definition of overcrowding. I would need to brush up on that, but it's a bright line. It's not subject to interpretation or guesswork. There's a very clear standard of what overcrowding represents, and I don't have it at my fingertips.
I wonder if you could update the slide and just give it back to us at some time in the future, because I think my hypothesis, and it would just be interesting to test it, is that if you use the definition of overcrowding, which is 2 per bedroom plus 1, that you would see an even more disparate sort of set of data there with the different groups you've identified. And I think it might just be, it might help inform policy decisions. So that's just my first comment there. My second question is, do you have the affordability breakdown of the pipeline?
We do, but we weren't prepared to share it tonight simply because we're still finalizing it with staff and making sure it's accurate.
Yes, of course, that's subject to change. And I understand that until the moment the building permit is pulled, there might be some nuances and slight differences there. It would be really helpful to see what the pipeline is able to cover in pretty much every category besides the above moderate category. So those lower categories. And then to the extent that you can also, I know it's not required by RENA, but identify the extremely low income category. That's just a point of interest for me. Because I think, unfortunately, lumping in everybody with ELI and BLI together somehow masks that there's a really big difference in talking about the impact of rent burden on those 2 groups, and it's significant. And so to the extent that you can help us understand who is impacted most deeply through your numbers and make that plain for us, I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you. That's good. Good point.
And my last question is just around Project Home Key. I understood that there's some special treatment of that in the housing element, and I'm not sure that there are really any sites that could be identified, but having seen the governor's budget, which represents a 4x increase in Project Home Key funding, and also the recent press release, or excuse me, press conference where the governor came to Mountain View and stood in the Life Moves project that had a lot to do with modular construction on city, I believe it was city-owned land, I'm not exactly sure. But I think that it represents a strategy that you might want to consider or add to your group there, because, both from a resource perspective, but also I think that you may get extra RENA points in some way for it. I don't know the details. And so that's something that maybe you could just add as part of the strategy as this advances to other groups, so that you can get some input as to whether or not the really aggressive plans to try to combat homelessness. And especially, I know it is a state priority to bring family homelessness to functional zero, which I think is of huge interest to this city, because we know that family homelessness exists from speaking to and hearing many people comment over the years from school districts, just wanting to understand kind of those dynamics and where there may be some opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Rachel?
I thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. I have a question that I think will help us as we are asked to opine and provide answers to your questions. And that is, and it may be something more for staff to address, but I find it really difficult to hold all of the criteria in my head for what makes for an acceptable site, right? So has the site been used in the last 2 housing elements? Does it meet the threshold of 30 dwelling units per acre? You know, is it bigger than half an acre but smaller than 10? And so, you know, you're really getting at that with the maps, which was great, and I appreciated seeing that. I think what would make it easier for me, though, to really provide an informed response is to even take it a step further, which is, given your sense of, and I know we're only at the very beginning of this, but given your sense of what those criteria are, sites that have been used in previous housing elements, sites that we've identified just by looking at those maps, can we say that we cannot be approaching this through the status quo? We're going to have to do something different. We're not going to be able to reuse sites from last, that's not going to cut it. From last time around, it's not going to cut it. We're not going to be able to put all the sites in one part of the city. That's not going to cut it. We're not going to be able to, you know, necessarily just look at single family and let's get rid of single family. That'll solve everything. That's not going to cut it. So I just wanted to hear maybe a little bit more push from staff to really frame this for us, that we do have to be thinking about things maybe that we didn't think about in the last housing element cycle. And I'm not saying that as trying to color this in any way, but really just to frame it for us so that we're able to accurately respond to your question.
No, for my sake, I would agree with that sentiment that this time is different than previous cycles. There is not just, there's at least two or three different reasons for that, and major reasons for that. And the first one is the RENA is in order of magnitude higher than it's been in the last 2 or 3 cycles. So that's major. The second thing is, under the new fair housing law from 2018, which specifically points to housing elements and says, when you do your housing element, you must do this. You must plan for a fair and equitable future for your community. Then automatically we can't revert to old patterns and say, well, you know, we put all the high density housing over there, and we put all the low density housing over there, and that's just the way we've always done it. So that's not going to fly. And the third thing is, I can't remember the third thing. It's really those two things. Those two things interacting together, the higher number and the need to have a more distributed, equitable pattern is is really a game changer in how we look at this. And that's why we tried to come up with enough different policy strategies around housing location that would, by their very nature, implicate the entire city. Because we frequently do this in smaller cities where we literally look at every parcel, because you have to squeeze out every possible housing opportunity just to meet the arena. So we're almost in that situation now with the need to come up to that higher number and distribute the housing throughout the whole city, that we're at that point where through the analysis, we will wind up having to look at every parcel and see if there's opportunity there. And that's different for a city the size of Menlo Park.
Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you. And I so appreciate how concisely you went over everything, Jeff, and your comments, because I'm piggybacking on what Rachel said, which is that, oh, this is going to get me in trouble. The status quo has got to go, which feels like it should be on a picket sign somewhere. And I'm sure has been at one point in time, but understanding which of those groups that you pointed out to us as opportunities, which would net us the most potential units. I know that's hard to say without going through an extensive and exhausting process of talking with developers and having them figure out how many sites they could, or how many units they could put on a site and things like that. I get concerned when we throw religious institutions in the mix, because I don't want any one pillar of the community to have to shoulder a ton of burden. And I feel like we're expecting them to do a lot. And I think that can be difficult for a number of reasons. So I'll be interested to see just how much work we think we can do with the religious institutions. I, of course, always think that transit-oriented development along transit corridors is the way to go, because it makes the most sense for densification and traffic patterns and the like, because you don't have to park them as high, which is incredibly costly. If folks are using transit, which is better for the planet, better for everyone. The other question I wanted to ask was, how many of those 0.5 acre to 10 acre sites were in West Menlo area? Because it looked like a significant portion of them, which I was delighted by, because I think that spreading development through the city is the right way to go for our neighborhoods, and so that they can all be equitably used and lived in. So I think those are my two real big questions. Thank you so much.
Sure, thanks, Lauren. I can ask the last one first. Of the single family parcels we identified in that map, there's about 6,600 of them. And about 10% of them were in that size range from half an acre to 10 acre. So 684 parcels. And I have to ask you to repeat the first question.
It
feel like it
kind
was
of
a,
rambled, so
was a
it's
big,
totally
it,
understandable.
it was a big one, right?
Yeah, it was just trying to understand your guesstimate about which of the groupings, whether it was religious institutions or
right.
El Camino, which
Yeah.
of them you thought netted us the most potential units,
Okay.
because they're all kind of lined out
Right.
equally in my mind.
Right, exactly. Great question. The churches, the religious facilities, I don't think it was going to be as big as I had originally envisioned. There's only 26 tentatively. There's less than 30 churches we've identified in the community, which sounds like a pretty good number. But a lot of them are on very small sites. And so the estimates for that, I think, are going to be I'm going to say the low hundreds, like at the very most. And from a policy perspective, there wouldn't be like pressure on churches to like convert their parking lots to housing, but it would dovetail with the new state law that's sort of opening that door as a possibility, whereas before, a church who may have wanted to add housing would be told, well, that's great, but you have to make up all that parking. We need a space for every 2 or 3 people in your pews. And that adds up to these big parking lots we see in some of these larger churches. But yeah, we definitely, there's a whole nother section of state law or federal law really, that says cities have to be really careful the way they interact with religious facilities and the way they make land use decisions around religious facilities. So it would be very much like ADUs. It's up to the property owner. It's allowed by the state. It's allowed by the city. It's encouraged by everybody, but it's totally 100% up to you as the property owner if you want to build a small cottage in your backyard.
To clarify my comments, comment question. I just meant that religious institutions and being able to build there are kind of like the new shiny thing. And I don't want us to get distracted and put undue amounts of energy towards something that may be a diminishing return as we see we have less and less churches that are interested.
So that's a very good insight. I was slowly coming around to that same thought. And then on the other solutions, some of the solutions have the potential to sort of be like too big. Like, you really don't want to convert 1,000 acres of your commercial property because you'd lose a lot of commercial properties, and you would generate, in theory, you would generate a lot more housing than you might want to plan for as part of this 8-year housing cycle. So that's kind of the range of some of these strategies, is from a few hundred units to thousands and thousands of units. But I think once we apply the filters to those commercial properties, those estimates will come down drastically. It'll be really an exercise of looking at a smaller subset and what would really be like the most ideal housing sites versus the max possible.
John.
Thank you, Karen. Jeff, thank you for the presentation. Very insightful and thoughtful. I had 3 questions or comments. The first was, I know our city has embraced ADUs to some extent, but I don't really know how effective or how well we've embraced them. Given your knowledge of how the other communities in the area have worked, how would you score Menlo Park's ADU policy, and from 1 to 5, as 5 is the best you've seen and 1 is the worst you've seen?
Well, I think the gold standard at this point is to be in compliance with state law, which Menlo Park is, obviously. And that gets you like 95% there in terms of encouraging and allowing ADUs. I think the effort really now has to be around more like marketing efforts, almost, getting the word out, because someone may have come down to City Hall 10 years ago and asked about an ADU and been told no. you can't have an ADU. Your property's too small, it's too skinny, your house is too big, you don't have the setbacks, our fees are too high. And that person is out there still thinking, I can't build an ADU on my property. So a lot of it is education programs, promotion, telling the not just the new homeowners, but the people who've been here a long time that, hey, there's a lot of change in this area. And we really, and people aren't necessarily going to build it to help the city meet their housing requirements, but if they knew how lenient the new rules were, then hopefully they would do it for their own natural, interest in providing a housing solution on their property.
Great. So in the industry or the marketplace, the state requirements are the gold standard, and Menlo Park is at least the state standards. So you're saying Menlo Park has the gold standard of ADU rules and policy if our goal is to encourage more ADUs. The more we can do to encourage more ADUs.
Yeah,
Other than marketing.
right. The thing I need to spend more time on digging into is some of the things you don't see at first when you just look at the planning requirements. There's outside agencies that charge fees that can undermine everything that a city is doing. If the sewer or the water or the outside fire district is charging fees that's too high, just one little impediment like that can make people just turn it off and say, no, I'm not gonna do this anymore. And so I have to step back and kind of look at everything as a possible constraint and see what's constraining it, because Menlo Park is not producing as many on a per capita or per parcel basis as your neighboring cities in San Mateo County. And I need to figure out why.
Karen, I'm not sure if this is an appropriate role for our commission or if we can task Jeff with follow-up work given his current scope of work. But I, for one, would be very supportive of drilling into the question he just raised, and that is, if we look holistically at our ADU policy, are we doing everything we can to facilitate ADUs, whether it be marketing or adjustments to rules or integrating the knowledge of third-party fees or other?
And that's
how might we look at recommendations we could make to the city council to maximize ADU uptake?
And from my perspective, Commissioner Pimentel, that's already part of our scope of work. We'll be doing that.
Awesome. Next question is, or observation, I guess, is clearly it looks like our entire pipeline is north or east of Highway 101, however you do your directions in Menlo Park. And it seems obvious to me with the numbers that we're going to have to hit that Chelsea's points are right on target. The only way we're going to get there is with big projects, tall buildings, parking included, affordable units required in downtown over our parking lots. So I guess that's my observation based on your good work. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
That's it? Okay.
Yes,
I'll go
ma'am.
next.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. And just a reminder that the ADU project to make, come up with programs to make ADUs more accessible, more inclusive to people of low incomes or who have code enforcement issues is on our work plan. So, yeah, exactly. So I have a few questions. One is, you mentioned, and I appreciate it, that the 30% of AMI for a single person is significantly more than a single person makes at a minimum wage job. And we know that we have a lot of minimum wage jobs that make our community chug along and thrive. So I feel like there's the RENA, and there's the AMI categories, and then there's the actual community needs. So where is that documented? Is that lifted up in this process? can it be maybe for Menlo Park because we're asking for it? For example, we've run into the problem in Bellhaven, some of those large, 8-floor apartment buildings that are going in, the affordable units are not affordable to the people who are impacted by that development because the AMI in Bellhaven, and that is part of my question, is I believe it's more like 50 or 60,000 a year is the area median income for a single person, and maybe 85 for a family of 4. I don't know that, but it's in that range. It's much less than the area median income. So can we aim for the appropriate target for our city with this process?
That's a good question. A lot of the regulatory framework is based on these countywide numbers. But HCD would tell us that the arena numbers that everyone fixates on are a minimum, right? If we know we have more extremely low income households in the city, and particularly in a certain part of the city, then using our local general plan powers, we can plan for that. We don't have to just hit the minimum. We could say, well, in our town, we need to focus on not just very low income, but extremely low income. And you can have goals in the housing element that show how you're going to comply with RHNA, but then you also have the opportunity to show what your local goals may be that are different and over and above the bedrock RHNA minimums.
Okay, but I guess it's sort of a request if you could lift up those numbers, because they're probably in all the data that you're sifting through, and put them in a sidebar for us.
Sure.
That would be super awesome. Okay, next question. When you talk about the reuse, the 5th cycle sites and the reuse, you mentioned that there's a minimum density required to accommodate low and very low RHNA. And then you say the project team will engage with the community to learn about what density ranges would be supported by the community. And that seems like a recipe for failure to me, because everybody supports affordable housing unless it's on their block or next door to them, right? So if you engage quote unquote the community, unless you have superpowers, you're going to be engaging the people who own homes and are more facile with public input and things like that. And you won't be engaging the people who really need that affordable housing. So my question is that a strategy only for the reuse sites and the 5th cycle sites, or is that, I hope that's not your strategy overall. I don't think we'll get there.
The thinking behind that, Commissioner Grove, was simply that if we want to reuse a site, like you said, there's a statutory requirement that we allow at least 30 units per acre. So if the city's currently only allowing 20, then automatically the minimum again is going to be 30. But the thought was, in order to create some room for discussion and get more housing, we should really be talking about a range between 30 and some other higher number. And that's what the discussion's about.
Okay.
It's not about going below 30 on a site that's been sitting there for 8 years. No one developed it. We're wondering why they didn't develop it. Now we know we have to increase the density and allow by right development. And if you're near the Caltrain station, should it really be 30 or should it be something else? You don't have those discussions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I agree with that as well. And my next question is, on the ADUs, I understand HCD's formula is what it is, but in a city like Menlo Park, where we have really, really large properties and very, very wealthy homeowners, many of these ADUs may not be residences. They might be playhouses, pool houses. Is there a way to know our average residence rate of our ADUs? Again, I know this isn't going to factor into the HCD stuff, but it could be a sidebar for us to assist us in policymaking.
Yeah, there's been a lot of good new information around those questions that in the past were just like big mysteries and subject to anecdotal examples. There's been statewide surveys that show the percentage that are used for short-term rentals, for example, versus regular rentals, long-term rentals. There's been local 21 elements, San Mateo County jurisdiction surveys that clearly show the rents for the ADUs fall 30%, 30%, 30% into the first 3 affordable income categories from very low, low, moderate. And then the last 10% is market rate, surprisingly, or above moderate. And so that's always what, as planners, we've always said, when we used to do our Craigslist surveys to try to figure out what people were renting ADUs for. And another thing that HCD solved for was there was always a big question of, well, if I have an ADU and my 22-year-old son is living in there for free, is that considered affordable housing? And HCD said, if the rent is 0, then it's very affordable. And you can count that as extremely low income. You're not necessarily getting a truly independent, self-sustaining single person household who's extremely low income in that unit, but you are getting one adult having the opportunity to have a very affordable rent level of 0. So a lot of those questions we do have more information to inform those discussions better.
Okay, was there anywhere in that answer about like pool houses?
Oh, about people not using it? I think there's good information about the percentages generally that are just not going to be used for housing. And we'll definitely share that when we next meet up. But so far I haven't seen anything that cities have been able to do about it, essentially.
Yeah.
I think you just have to assume there's going to be a certain amount of loss.
Yeah.
From a rental housing stock perspective.
It would be interesting to know how one assesses that just as a planning tool.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, then on the idea of going from exclusively single family zoning to 2, 3, and 4plex zoning, I saw that equity can be a consideration, and there's an angle of equity that I'm curious about, which is I attended a workshop on the Portland 5-year project to upzone their single family zoned communities, and they studied the effect on displacement, and they did pro formas to see which neighborhood, what kind of lot is likely to be redeveloped and which one is not. And someone else, one of the California speakers, opined that where property values are high, it's very unlikely that a property will redevelop as a plex. And so I'm thinking that in Menlo Park, that might mean that in Bellhaven, we see a lot of redevelopment into plexes, and we don't see it anywhere else in the city. So I had a glimmer of hope here. And yet I live in a high property, large lot, and I would love to turn my house when I don't need it anymore into a plex. So I would love for it to be allowed, even if it's infrequent. But back to my question, is it possible with a fair housing law and all of that to say this neighborhood, I think you already mentioned near you could say this neighborhood, which is transit accessible, will be able to be upzoned for plexes. But more than that, because if suddenly magically there were excellent transit in Bellhaven, I would still like to avoid them getting the brunt of of Plex development and
Mhm.
like carve them out as a form of, equity if
Mhm.
we are to do it. So is that permissible? Is that what you meant? I'm thinking now that you've given the presentation, that might not be what you meant by equity, but that was my hope. So my question is
No, there's
about
definitely
that.
a concern about displacement effects if you just unleash like a whole new paradigm in these single family neighborhoods. What does that do to the real estate market? How does the market respond? How does that affect existing long-term renters, long-term owners who are offered just cash on the spot for their property and everything just happens real quickly? And then the other side of that, the argument, well, you shouldn't do anything because it's something bad's going to happen, and it doesn't justify trying to move the needle forward. And the thought there was to take sort of a local government perspective to this issue and say, well, if this is something we want to try, let's try it on a more limited scale over here based on a more limited defined set of criteria, around access to transit, parks, schools, grocery stores. And maybe it's only for a certain amount of time, right? Some cities, when they want to experiment with a new housing type, like micro units, they say, well, this is good for 3 or 4 years. There's a cap of 1,000 units. Let's see how it goes. And so I think there's room here for some experimentation, and kind of see like how people respond to it before a wholesale change is made across, wide areas of the city.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is maybe for you and it is maybe for Deanna, but I think at our last meeting, the next step was to hear about policy proposals or to discuss policy ideas related to the housing element. And I see that we're not doing that today. But one of the policies I feel really strongly about as we upzone is anti-displacement policies that work. And you did have, we're going to get to this, but the ones that we tried last cycle did not work. So I'm looking forward to that conversation, and I think it really needs to be firmly tied to the upzoning, so that they work. Because if you upzone a certain level and then you pass tenant protections, then suddenly things don't pencil out. So we have to upzone enough that the tenant protections do pencil out. So I guess the question is that's still something we're going to be discussing at some point?
Yes, we definitely like to come back and discuss policy issues with the Housing Commission.
Okay. All right, that is the end of my clarifying questions. And I think if anybody has a stairway question, something they thought about after the fact, now's the time. Otherwise, I think we'll go to public comment. Okay. Mike, can you see if there's any public comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please engage the raised hand feature, and I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment to the Housing Commission. If you are dialing in, you may push *9, and that is *9. Okay, so we do have quite a few public comments, so I'll get our timer ready. Okay, and our first public commenter will be Lynn Bramlett. And Lynn, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank Jeff. This is Lynn Bramlett. I live in District 3 near the Caltrain station on Oak Grove. And I want to thank Jeff for the excellent presentation and also for your service. This will be a very difficult and very important task. A few comments. The pipeline projects seem to be all in District 1. I find that concerning. Continue the unfair policies over there in terms of concentrating our housing there. And I too believe that it should be spread through the city. And by that, I'm thinking, especially districts 3 through 5, And I don't consider it that hard actually to walk to transit. During COVID, I started walking up to the Safeway in Sharon Heights, and it kind of encourages a healthy lifestyle. Now, I have a few points related to the discussion you might not have thought of. One is the number of second homes that people don't live in. I found quite a few of those when I was working for the Census Bureau. Maybe they could be taxed or some kind of policy that they must occupy them at least 60% of the year or rent them out. Quite a few. I think we should also, if we're not now, we should maximize development wherever it's possible. A few years ago, one of my neighbors got a notice about a development. He's blind, so I checked it out for him, and I was surprised that they were putting in 2 units when the lot size allowed 4. And I brought that up, and it didn't really go anywhere, and it wasn't my issue, my top issue to push. Airbnb, that could be taken away, an ADU. I also think we should, when we have a development, increase the percentage of housing and drop down the office. And then a mobile home park that hasn't been brought up here, that's kind of what was brought up earlier, but not exactly. I think a couple of mobile home parks. And there are some apartments actually on El Camino behind shops. I was surprised to find this out. And again, as a census worker, for example, Guy Plumbing, in the back, they have approximately 4 apartments back there, because I got sent out to, find out about that. Now, some of these might not be inhabitable, but there could be a certain amount of existing apartments that aren't being used as apartments that maybe could be used in that way. So I think these are all my comments here. Again, really want to thank you, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing here.
Thank you, Lynn. All right, and our next public commenter will be, and I apologize if I am not getting your last name correct, but it will be Andrew Bilak, and you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Yes, good evening, commissioners and staff and the M Group team. My name is Andrew Bilak. I'm the Associate Director of Development at Midpen Housing. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer, owner, and service provider. We operate 5 100% affordable developments in Menlo Park, so we're very invested in this process. We also understand there's a focus group that I think is being discussed related to developers, and haven't heard any new news about that, but definitely want to be able to participate in that effort and support the process in other ways. Before the previous, as part of the process previously for the last housing element, we actually evaluated every site that was in the initial inventory, looking at financial feasibility for tax credit financing, which is really critical for affordable housing projects, and also just looking at general site characteristics and conditions. So we are one of many developers that works closely with the city and has a track record, and we provide technical assistance as a basic part of our work to city partners. So we would definitely welcome contributing to that way in the housing element process this round as well. I want to acknowledge the work that the staff from the city and the consultant team has done so far, and also recognize how time sensitive this is due to state mandated deadlines. So I think this time pressure at the same time makes it all the more essential that the city does a robust outreach process. So I was glad to hear some of that information shared by the consultant, Jeff, about the process that's happening. And I think it also makes it particularly important to focus on historically underrepresented groups and extremely low-income individuals who are the most affected by these policies, and also have the fewest housing options and face the biggest burdens. I'm glad to see the city is focusing on strategies for various strategies for reaching its RHNA targets. And I think, as was mentioned, we encourage you to provide some additional details on sites that are being examined, including the ones that were cited as in the pipeline, to really understand how we are going to reach the goals around very low and low-income housing. The almost 1,200 units that are considered low and low income are is almost 3 times as much as the previous cycle. So definitely want to see the city focusing on policies that are effective. A couple that I didn't hear mentioned a lot was looking at public lands in particular, which are very critical to making affordable housing work, and also incorporating affordable housing overlay zones, which I know has been done previously by the city as well. Considering the legacy of economic and racial segregation, we also think it's really important to identify affordable housing sites across the city and in different school districts. I want to thank you again for giving me the time to talk and encourage the city to continue to refine its approach to avoid some of the mistakes of the past and tackle the challenges that are affecting Menlo Park residents in need of better housing opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And our next speaker will be, so I have SV Leeds. So I will unmute you, but if you could please list your first and last name for the commission, that would be appreciated.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. My name is Kelsey Baines. Apologies for being in the wrong Zoom. I am with the group Peninsula for Everyone. We are a regional pro-housing group, and we advocate for more housing for people of all incomes and abilities. And we are also part of the Campaign for Fair Housing, which is a statewide effort to enforce fair housing law in the upcoming housing element cycle. And I think this commission and the public comment has been a really robust discussion. Really impressed by the comments that have already been made, and would just encourage Menlo Park to focus on strategies to improve affordable housing production, including permanent supportive housing for people at the extremely low income end of the spectrum, all the way up to middle income people, which is an area that Menlo Park really struggled with in the last housing element. And I think particularly for Menlo Park, given the status quo of segregation, it's really important to center affirmatively furthering fair housing and thinking about proactive steps we can take to dismantle patterns of segregation. It's important to acknowledge that Menlo Park's first and only housing element may have actually exacerbated segregation in Menlo Park. So for the upcoming cycle, I think it's really important that we cite high density housing in the high resource, predominantly white neighborhoods. Just acknowledging that projects in West Menlo Park have been much lower density and much shorter than those in Bellhaven, despite greater access to services like grocery stores and transportation. And I agree with Commissioner Nguyen that there's a massive amount of affordable housing potential on public land, and surface parking lots downtown are the perfect place. The other part that I wanted to comment on is what was described as housing in single family areas and what I would call missing middle housing, and thinking about strategies for missing middle housing, recognizing that up to 3 units are already allowed in all areas. And there are definitely ways to increase that production with things like pre-approved designs and over-the-counter approvals. But currently things as simple as dividing a house in half to create a duplex, which is extremely low cost and low impact, is illegal. And my final point is to think carefully about carving out specific parts of town, because that might be unfair to property owners who will have to deal with lower property values and be left out of opportunities to accommodate multiple generations, and instead focus on really robust anti-displacement strategies. And sorry for running over.
Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, and our next commenter is phone number 650-208-3859, and you should be able to address the commission now. 1 second, let me, oh, Are you there?
Hello, this is Pam Jones, and I live in District 1. Most of you know that, and I've been here forever. And again, all these presentations, Jeff, I just really appreciate it. And I'm always getting more and more information. And I also appreciate all of the issues that the commissioners raise, and they're not new. You know, we've talked about it before, and maybe this time we will have parking and apartments in downtown Menlo Park, because we have a different commission. Okay, let me run through my things. One, I looked for what was working well and what could be improved in the housing element and was unable to locate anything. Two, we need to work with the developers and the lenders when it comes to profit on these units, and also to work with the nonprofits. We need transparency on the city property. We should have had a list, a public list of all of the city-owned property that would allow multifamily units, and specifically identifying what was in the 5th RENA cycle. With the ADUs, we need to have a moratorium on those units that are not in compliance. A program developed in order to help those folks to bring their units up to compliance, and that would add a number of units to what we need. And that's a thing over here in Belhaven specifically. Rezone all lots that are half acre or more to allow for duplexes, triplexes, and so forth and so on. And at the same time, when that's being worked, is the city has to educate, the city staff has to educate the residents that only means that if someone chooses to put those units on there, it would happen. Not that we're going to tell you to tear down your house and put up a duplex or an 8-story apartment building. So I think that's really important. And you're also preparing residents for the fact that the BMRs are going to be in their neighborhood. So they're going to have neighbors that don't look like them and may not even want to live next to them because they know they don't want them. So really going to have to do a piece around that. What else I have some other things here. Okay, so let me just end with this. We need to remember that even as of this year, that there's still being used the unique village character of Menlo Park. And that it's no accident that we have the highest rents in San Mateo County. That is clearly by design. And also that the units over here, the land where I live, lots where I live, are less than 12% of an acre, and that also some of that is over in the flood triangle. So keep that in mind, folks. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam, for your comment. Our next public commenter will be Ken Chan. And Ken, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can.
Oh, great, thank you. Well, hello members of the Menlo Park Housing Commission. My name is Ken Chan, and I'm an organizer with the Housing Leadership Council of San Mateo County. We work with communities and their leaders to produce and preserve quality affordable homes throughout the peninsula, which includes Menlo Park. On behalf of HLC, I'd first like to extend our appreciation to the City of Menlo Park and its staff for the work that has been done so far on the housing element. We know that the city has created a community engagement and outreach committee to inform this process. However, in reviewing the materials and information available so far, it isn't clear how the city will encourage and receive participation from our community members who have historically been excluded. In our comment letter written in cohort with our partners from public advocates and public interest law projects, we outline 3 main strategies that the city must take in order to meet the minimum standard that the state of California requires in the housing plan. The first is making all information around the housing element process available in multiple languages. City staff should also reach out to our local community groups who have historically not been informed in the housing elements process. You may find this list in its entirety in our submitted letter. And finally, and most importantly, a strategy that needs to be considered is the prioritization of public land in the city of Menlo Park. It's our hope that the city will commit to a process as transparent and in compliance with the standard outlined by HCD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And I thought we had one more commenter, so I will just make one last call for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment to the Housing Commission. Please use the raised hand feature. Okay, and we do have one more. And our next public speaker will be Adina Levin. And you should be able to unmute your microphone now.
Hi, good evening, staff and consultants and commissioners. 11 Menlo Park resident, and wanted to really thank the staff and consultants for a robust presentation, and the commission for raising some really good and important issues, as well as the members of the public. Wanted to echo what a number of people have said in terms of moving away from the pattern of having all of the housing in one part of town, and moving density to be in the areas near downtown and services, and more public transit, and including the policies about where there is the density, because the near downtown areas can, with all the services and transit and walkability, can accommodate the density, which will allow for the affordable housing. Want to echo the comments about Menlo Park being historically segregated, and the importance of really proactively, affirmatively furthering fair housing in terms of having opportunities across the city. I want to support what others have said in terms of making sure that there's housing for people at all income levels, extremely low and very low income levels, supporting the looking at the publicly owned property, including potentially the garages. I had heard that there was some business interest in moving the farmers market onto Santa Cruz, which would be fantastic in and of itself, and then would enable the use of potentially more of the parking lots for housing. I'm going to have some comments about the policies, including car parking. Hopefully I will come to that meeting as well, but would like us to look particularly in the more central downtownish areas with a lot of services about how much parking we actually need. I believe that Redwood City has a standard of, I think, 33% driving for the places that are the most transit rich and service rich and walkable. And in the last couple of seconds, I do remember in the general plan, we have a protect community character piece in the general plan. And I had always wondered about whether that was actually about protecting the economic segregation in our city, and was wondering if that's a fair housing issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And one moment, Madam Chair. Okay, and just one last call for public comment on this item, item D2. And not seeing any additional comments, I'll return the meeting to the chair.
Okay, thank you. So I want to make sure we have in front of us, at least for a moment, can we put up the prompts, the questions that, well, I remember them. The first one is, what is working well and what should we not repeat about the current housing element cycle? The second one, I believe, is, yeah, how can we plan for affordable housing? And the third one is, how can we plan for racial and economic integration? Did I get that right? Anyway, so what I think we should just take turns commenting. I don't know that we need to take one question at a time. But if somebody feels strongly that we should take one question at a time, I'm fine with that. I actually kind of think we could take the first one by itself, and then the second two are very connected, and we could take those together. But if you feel compelled to address both of them when you raise your hand, that is fine. So I will take people's comments. Commissioner Leach, thank you for going first.
You can always count on me to go first because then I get it out of the way. I'm less aware. I'm going to confess to a little ignorance on the what's working, what isn't working in the element. I think I've lived in the Bay Area for decades, and one of the issues is the mushy multi-tentacle issue of like, we come up with a plan. How do we execute it? How do we get, there are multitudinous barriers to getting these projects through. And, you know, while if I have money and a lot of land, you will have a clamoring horde of people willing to put a very expensive house on that land. How do we compel people to these units to get built? And we have to compel people to make sure that they, I mean, 10% affordable housing or whatever it is, I mean, I think we can all agree, there's a really good plan in place, I think, to increase the affordable housing. How do we give it teeth? And is it within, I don't think we have the power to give it teeth, but how does Menlo Park give it teeth? What carrots and sticks do we put in place? I don't know. I'm new to this. So that would be the best laid plans, you know, falling by the wayside concern I have. I don't have, and I don't have a solution.
Okay, but that's all right. That's good. There's another additional
I think maybe outreach and marketing would be one thing, but then regulations, fines, I don't know.
Yeah. Chelsea, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Leach. I just want to tell you that I've been living here for more than 40 years, and I can tell you that it took me 20 years to get off the BMR waiting list. It is not easy. And the city had a policy of only 15% that the developer has to provide for BMR. So if they don't build very much, then there isn't going to be very much for the folks who are on the waiting list. That's what it was for me up to 10, 15 years ago. So all I can say is that we have to change. We have to, there has to be simultaneous approaches to this, right? The city has to change from 15% to 20 or 25%. And then we have to be more proactive in terms of finding public land. Like I said, you know, what I mentioned before is parking lot is the easiest thing to do, is to convert, because we already own that. If we leave everything to the developers, they're going to say, okay, here's your 15% or 20%, whatever you ask of us, and everything else we're going to jack up. Their job isn't to help us. Their job is to find land so they can make money. Okay, that's their job. So I've been advocating for, you know, using public land, and we have right there downtown. And this is another way of solving it. So one thing is to change the rules when it comes to, change the guideline, the BMR guideline when it comes to developers. We can raise that. I don't know how people feel about that. And then another way is change zoning for the parking lot into mixed use. That is something that we can do. But as for changing people's minds, some people, you know, I think like education, you know, some people are very, I have some people have contacted me and said, this is, my town. I hate to see it go away, to see, multi-story buildings. I like it, single story ranch style. I like to see the sunlight, I don't want anybody to build next to my house or build next to whatever. I've heard it. And the only way is to ask people for understanding and compassion. We should have seen this though. The RENA process, it's 8 year, okay? We should have seen this already coming, that it jumped as high as from the 3-digit to 4-digit right now. We should have seen it because we had Facebook moving into town. We had, Amazon headquartered in Seattle, but they start building a lot of satellites offices here. They have one already in East Palo Alto. We've seen these coming, and we didn't have to wait for RENA to tell us, okay, here you have to build 2,946 units. We've seen this, and I think we should have been prepared for it. And part of it is, our fault.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Karen. I guess I'll just repeat a different form of what I said previously, in that I think the housing element is an opportunity for us, and it will be a missed opportunity if we, for whatever reason, political or otherwise, decide not to focus a lot of energy on figuring out how to build big, tall projects with parking in our downtown area. So I would encourage us to really look at that as a key piece of the housing element. I think that's the only way we're going to be able to move the needle in any substantial way. All the other work we do is, holding developers, on a unit here and a unit there basis is important, but the best way, I think the most material way for us to fulfill our mission would be that type of massive change. I don't know if our city is ready for it. I don't know if a majority of the board of the city council wants it. I don't know if a majority of our voters want it, but it seems to me, given all the facts, which I won't recite, we all know them, about how our existing densities work, that's going to be really the opportunity for us to lean into in the housing element. And I hope we will call it out and try and evaluate every angle of that outcome as a way to help the city council see the need to consider that approach. Thank you.
Thanks. Lauren, I see your hand.
I think that all the things that have been mentioned are really important. I want to call out accessibility issues. So from multiple different perspectives. So I think that we can honestly say that the wonderful people who engage with us on a regular basis do in fact come on a regular basis. And so we are clearly not, well, one of two things is happening. Either we are reaching people and they do not feel comfortable coming and speaking with us, or we are not reaching people and then they don't know about the resources. And so both of those things are of concern to me because I want everybody to be able to participate in our community, not just folks who, not just the folks that we see regularly, though I love them dearly, truly, truly I do. I think that that's a big issue. And, I think one of the things, it may sound dumb to kind of put this out there, but I think taking into consideration, even though it's repeated regularly, the cost of things as an accessibility issue too. It's a barrier to entry, right? So people can't stay, people can't move here if we don't have places for them to live. And if our examples of places that people could live are RVs along public lands or very costly ADUs or church parking lots. Those are little bitty pieces of solutions, and not necessarily, I think, as John has spoken to before, big swings that we could take to make big impacts on these issues. I knew you'd like that. So I just want to make sure that we're reaching everybody where they are, and making them know what resources are available, that they are welcome and wanted. And yeah, that while a lot of these multiple modes of possibility are wonderful, I don't want us to get distracted by the things that may just net us one unit here, one unit there, rather than bigger properties that house more of our families and our communities. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rachel.
All right, try to say new things. So many good things have been said already, so I thank you, commissioners. I'm also trying to remember exactly what the questions were. So I think the first one was the previous or the current housing element, how are we doing, what can we do next time? And I mean, yeah, reading it now, you know, there are issues that you can take with it, with the work plan, with the sites strategy, with the sites analysis. And I mean, reading it now, it's pretty clear that it capitulated to a certain set of interests. And I'm not even convinced that those interests are the average sentiment these days. So I don't even know if that's, you know, likely to reoccur. But I think based on our conversation and based on the presentation, it's clear that we can't take that route again. For reasons of fair housing, and also for reasons of developing a housing element that actually is interested in developing housing over the 8-year period. I think in terms of strategies to make sure that affordable housing actually gets built over this next period, the phrase that keeps coming into my mind is don't put your eggs, all your eggs in one basket, right? So it's obviously going to take a combination of strategies, and at the end of the day, this is a pretty passive exercise that the city takes because the city doesn't develop the housing, and we're trying to create conditions that incentivize development. And on that note, you know, we can't just rely on our inclusionary housing program, but we obviously need to look at it. We obviously need to be looking at public land, which has been mentioned several times already and by the commenters, and for good reason. Public land in high opportunity areas, and that's why we're talking about the parking lots in the downtown area. So we have that convergence of those two things, so that's good. But while we're looking at the numbers that we need to hit, I think it would be very helpful to focus on the levels of the different levels of affordability, and making sure that we hit those targets, because different strategies will be needed to meet different levels of affordability, targets at those levels of affordability. So we need to constantly be reminding ourselves of the fact that, yeah, we have this large arena number, but we have a subset of targets to hit. And I'm glad one of the public speakers brought this up about affordable housing overlay zone. Because what may happen is we get it to the point where we create conditions where housing is possible and feasible and likely, but then we want affordable housing to be developed there. Well, how do we ensure that that's the case, right? So we need to create that opportunity to give the edge to the affordable housing developer to actually develop those units that we want to see, right? Of course, people live on a lot of the sites that we're looking at because they will be redevelopment sites or non-vacant sites. And so as was mentioned by the chair, but just to reiterate as part of this conversation, we obviously have to consider relocation, tenant protections, displacement, anti-displacement measures, because, you know, on the one hand, we're looking for redevelopment. On the other hand, we don't want to be displacing people from our community. And finally, generally what my ideas are about how do we get this affordable housing, how do we do it in an equitable manner. I'm going to put in a request, and that is we need to be thinking about sites in terms of their realistic development capacity so we can make the call as to whether or not it's a good site for affordable housing. And one of those things that we'll take into consideration is the location of that site. So that we ensure that there's, you know, equitable distribution geographically and in terms of where there's, you know, transit opportunity, all the things that we've been talking about. And so I know that it's largely a planning exercise, but for the next time around that we're having this discussion, because I believe this will happen at least one more time once we get more specific about the particular sites, is we need to really drill down into not just what's the density allowed on this site and is there now housing allowed, but everything, you know, what are the development standards that we're looking at for this site, because that level of detail will tell us how likely it is that development will happen. And we need to all be aware of that and speaking the same language so that we can make informed recommendations about where we should be, you know, identifying sites for the next housing element. So I'd just like to put that out there, that even though we're the Housing Commission, I think we would all like to see when we get to that point, really that level of detail of, okay, what's gonna maybe move the needle and make sure that housing is developed here and not commercial, and that affordable housing is developed here and it's feasible and not just market rate housing. So those are my initial thoughts. You're muted, Karen.
Thank you. Chelsea, I saw your hand before Nevada's, but we haven't heard from Nevada yet, so I'm going to call on her next.
Hi, thank you. I think with respect to what's not working, it seems as though, you know, the ADU yield really isn't working because we haven't been able to squeeze out very many using that strategy. And so I was a bit inspired by Commissioner Pimentel's comments, and I think I have heard of other cities exploring a ADU program. Some of that is done sometimes by working with another nonprofit to support the strategy. And I think also it could be a way for us to chip away at the paucity of moderate restricted units. You have restricted and then unrestricted moderate units. There's sort of a two parts to the category there, but that might be a way to kind of thread the needle with that. And then I think another thing that's just not working with the ADU strategy is that it's very costly to go through the design exercise to kind of figure out what you might build there. And so I also see other jurisdictions in the region. I think, you know, San Jose, people must know that the social media folks must know I like ADUs because I get all of these advertisements for like pre-approved by the city of San Jose, this modular ADU that you can just drop in your backyard. And I think, you know, that would be great to have a few things that were just pre-approved by the city, so you wouldn't have to spend so much money just on the studying of the concept, and you would know that if you met certain criteria, it was going to work. And you know, they also have I've seen some pre-approved floor plans if you wanted to do something more of a stick-built execution. But I think there could be a lot to be done to beef up those programs, and potentially in connection with a more experienced third party. I think the housing element implementation report that's submitted to HCD every year says a lot about what's not working, and that and those of you who have been with me on this commission for a while are probably a bit tired of hearing this spiel, but we're vastly overproducing at the above moderate levels. It said 700%, and we're not really meeting it on the rest of it. And while that's a dynamic that happens up and down the peninsula, it's pretty much the worst here at Menlo Park. So we should acknowledge that ours is the worst, and that we're going to need to work a lot harder to get some more balanced affordability throughout the city, and certainly geographic as well. Another piece of what's not really working that I'm not sure is necessarily just about the housing element, but it's that new state laws have been passed since the last housing element was passed, and that changes the way that works, so that certain things work and play out. And so an example of that would be since the advent of SB 330, there's an increased importance on the city policies really needing to be ironclad, buttoned up much better with respect to BMR requirements and guidelines, because we're not really allowed, we are not allowed to have one-off requirements on particular developments. We need to be applying our restrictions and our consistently. And so that means that there's less room for negotiation on some of this, and so we need to probably look at how our other policies are kind of playing with the interplay with the housing element, because what we published many years ago there's a lot of holes in the current environment. And then I've heard lots of people talk about an overconcentration in a single neighborhood isn't working. So I will just say that I echo those concerns, and hope that we see planning for the affordability that is needed citywide. And I think that would be a big improvement. Thanks.
Okay. Chelsea, I'm going to call on you again, and then I'll go. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I appreciate other commissioners' comments. I guess you all know why I'm so passionate about this issue. Being here, losing friends they have to force to move away, far, far away. And I just, I think that what I see doesn't work is that we haven't done anything. We haven't done anything to change much in the past 8 years. I want to clarify my comments about Amazon and those places. We see that we're getting more and more tech companies in town, which means that, everything is going to go up, supply and demands. And folks cannot afford to live here, just ordinary people. If you are not in tech, then, it's likely that you're not in that high level of income to be able to afford it. So I feel for every single person that I have come in contact with, from the teller to the cashiers to friends who, I have a widow woman, Grace. She was living in this tiny little apartment on Noah Street for years and years and years. Even after her husband passed away, she went to Menlo Church. And 6 years ago, she was forced to move out because her retirement income was just not enough for her to pay for that apartment anymore. And she just ended up moving to Hayward, and then moving out to Pleasanton, and moved out all the way to Antioch. I mean, she kept moving further out. She said, now, Chelsea, I can't go to Menlo Church anymore. It's been my church for so many years, even when my husband was alive. She's almost 80 years old. And she said, it's going to take me like an hour and a half to drive to Menlo Church, and then an hour and a half back. And I just can't do that. I'm getting too old. I feel for people like that. And it pains me that, our commission, our city council, we haven't done enough. We the signs have been there, you know, I mean, we don't need Rena to tell us you need 3,000 units. You know, we have seen the increasing rentals and apartments, and people been moving out, and the only people who could afford to live here are just folks who can afford it, and that they're just usually really wealthy folks and tech folks, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. And I just feel, I know I'm rambling, but I just feel like we ought to concentrate, just look at what Jeff has shown us and just concentrate on what we think is the most feasible. And I would think public land, because we already own that. And then go from there, and then we can go meet with, you know, I think Ms. Chow had mentioned that, you know, once we make the assessment, we can meet with planning and we can move forward. And I think we're just running behind right now in terms of catching up. I mean, the 8 years, we only have 2 more years left. Anyway, that's my thought.
Thank
And
you.
I apologize for taking too much time.
That, you know what, I actually really appreciate you sharing from the heart and the stories, because it really does ground us in why this is so important. And yeah, so my comments were very similar to what has been said. I think I dove into a little more detail, but basically what went wrong, what was good about the last housing element is we built a lot of houses, homes. What did not work is that we had massive displacement of lower socioeconomic residents, predominantly people of color, predominantly people who've been here since the 40s, and just heartbreaking. Communities torn apart, stories just like the one Chelsea just told. People driving back to go to church because their community is here. They just can't afford to live here. We're seeing increasing homelessness, and we know that for every one homeless outreach person we send out, we need, I think the guideline is 2 transitional homes and 4 extremely low income, permanently affordable homes. And the people most at risk of becoming our future homeless residents are the people who are rent burdened, who earn extremely low incomes, or who have disabilities and can't work and are on a fixed income. So I'm just echoing what everybody else has said, which is there's a lot on the plate for the housing element. And if we don't prioritize and focus on what is most important to us, we won't get it done. And that's extra true, because what is most important to me is the extremely low income housing for people of all abilities. And so, you know, even if what I really wanted to do was market rate, if we didn't focus on it, we wouldn't get it. But it's particularly true of the thing that is hard. It's the hardest. We need a lot of money. We need the land. So my number one focus for this housing element is extremely low income housing for all people of all abilities. And I actually think it's really ideal to have that located downtown near services. But I also live in Sharon Heights, and I think we need some of it in Sharon Heights, because we have 2 high-performing school districts in our city, and we have public land in Sharon Heights also. It's a beautiful park. It's 10 acres, but there's a corner of it that is either barren or has eucalyptus trees on it. Eucalyptus trees are weeds, so there's no problem in my mind getting rid of them. The 2 adjoining streets to that corner, one of them is a golf course and the other has 2 homes. So I know that neighbors probably wouldn't be happy about that, but I call on sort of us and council and planning commission and other community members to consider everything. So that is publicly owned land that I think we should consider for affordable housing. It's not near transit, but it's near shops and it's near parks and it's near good schools. And another area in my district is the Safeway shopping mall with a large parking lot. I think that's another opportunity area, but I don't really know. I mean, maybe the developer is like, no way, I don't ever want to change anything. But we need to assess that. And I think a good way to compare like the parkland versus the commercial land is to look at, let's say we need to build, if you do the extra 30%, we need to build 900 and some extremely low or very low income homes. So what would it cost to put 200 of them, or I don't know, maybe that's too much to fit on an acre of Sharon Park, but however many would fit, I guess it could, no, that would be really high. Anyway, however many we might be able to fit on Sharon Park, how many could we fit on the shopping center? At what cost on the shopping center? Because the land is not free to the city. And like, just do a little side by side and don't eliminate anything, because we have a really, really big goal and we need to take every possibility seriously and mine it for everything we can get out of it in terms of the most challenging type of housing. So that's what I think we did not do last time. And I think we absolutely need to do it this time. I think that the upzoning, the affordable housing overlay downtown did not work. The only affordable housing we got downtown or near downtown was the inclusionary units. And I also think that our inclusionary program is not working, as has been mentioned. For one thing, as I point out, and as Chelsea pointed out, we have such a huge income and wealth divide that using the average income to create categories of affordability doesn't work, because when you do that, 30% of the area median income is higher than minimum wage income. So that's another thing that didn't work, and that's not entirely just Menlo Park's fault. That's the way the system is designed, but it is partly Menlo Park's fault, because we could design our programs to acknowledge that and add into it. We could find a funding stream to add to subsidies so that we can actually create the affordability, the homes at the affordability that we need. Let's see. And of course, as has been said, the concentration in District 1 was something that didn't go well. Yeah, I think those are my comments on like the past. Oh, and I think I mentioned the anti-displacement strategies didn't work. There was a list of strategies that the Housing Commission proposed to City Council, and they included rent stabilization and just cause for eviction. And in that situation, the City Council said, we don't want to consider those policies. And that was the end of that. So in some cases, it was that we just didn't do them. And in other cases, we passed policies like a 12-month lease ordinance and a week tenant relocation assistance program that just didn't work. So we definitely need to do better. And when I was talking about tenant protections in terms of upzoning, Rachel listed a few, but one that's really important is the right to return. So if a property is redeveloped, the people who live there are relocated, and then they are allowed to return at their previous rent. And so then the upzoning has to be such that the developer can still make the profits they need to make while following that. And then for how can we produce the affordable housing we need? I was actually kind of confused that question was asked, because as has been said, we know we need tax credit financing and we need public land. And then we need to decide what we want, and we need to put it out to bid, because we heard from the Midpen housing director, and I'm sure we could just as easily have heard from Bridge Housing and others. We've heard over and over from public commenters and advocates, dedicate the public land, define what you want, put out an RFP, and the developers will come and they'll solve your problems and we'll make it work. And in fact, Rhonda did that when she was working in Redwood City. So we even have the expertise in-house. So another thing I think we need to look at are, what are the barriers to us doing what we already know we need to do and that we can do? we have the expertise to do. I believe it's resources in part. For the last 2 budget cycles, I've gone to city council and asked for additional housing staff because I've seen firsthand that there are things we want to do. We have a work plan where we want to focus on extremely low income housing for large families near downtown. We want to focus on having a state-of-the-art ADU program that yields great things. But we can't even start those until we have the capacity on staff to work with us. Right now, we're working on our below market rate guidelines, which we've heard is important, especially with SB 330. So we're doing that, and while we're doing that, we can't do anything else because we have 1 staff person. So those are my thoughts. I think we know what to do. We just need to resource and remove barriers, I think, and marshal our will. And I think that all of that answers the second question too about social and racial equity, socioeconomic and racial equity. So I'll stop there and see if anybody has any reactions. I see Nevada.
Hi, thank you for your comments, Chair Grove. I wanted to just offer that I was sorry to miss the meeting in July. I do think it's a fairly common thing to take vacation during the week of 4th of July, but my apologies nonetheless. But this is a dynamic that I wanted to highlight in our outreach. And I know that the city has to keep things moving and has a timeline and has to keep putting one foot in front of the other. But I was a little bit underwhelmed by the outreach and the opportunities for input that were laid forth in July because I know that there were certain focus groups that the city was recruiting for, but that seemed to have by the time that was mentioned to this commission, there was just a few days to sign up for it. And then, upon returning from vacation, I was interested in seeing, what were the focus groups that we were recruiting for? And that information isn't currently up on the, just isn't on the website. So I would just ask for a little bit more transparency there. And then I know there was supposedly like a homeowners focus group that if the city had your email, that you would get an email about that. But, my husband and myself did not receive such email. And I do get a lot of emails from the city, and I believe that they have my email address. So I'm just kind of, I bring it up because I'm concerned that if I'm not in the loop, that maybe other people who want to be in the loop are not as well. So if we could redouble our efforts to do that, I would be ever so grateful. Yeah. So, and I do know that I'm getting emails about other things and text messages too about, reimagining public safety. I got notified for that like maybe 2 or 3 different times. So there are certain systems that seem to be working pretty well. And I often get alerts related to things going on that impact Bellhaven. So there just seem to be, lists and groups upon groups upon groups. And I'm wondering, could we spend a little time to figure out what are the ways that seem to be effective in reaching people? And can we kind of funnel our housing efforts to reach out to people through those and spend some time on that? So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to call on Rachel had her hand up, but I want to just echo what Nevada talked about in terms of outreach. Another thing on our work plan is to improve our commission's outreach. And specifically, we set a goal to hold 3 monolingual Spanish accessible public input meetings by the end of this calendar year. So I see this housing element as a really good opportunity to achieve our goal in that respect. But to do that, really, we need to have a partnership with a group that is in contact and has trust and relationships with the Spanish dominant, Spanish speaking monolingual community in our city. And we have Nuestra Casa, and I think there were some others mentioned in the letter from HLC who we could work with. But that it takes an effort to establish a partnership, and it takes money. I mean, these are struggling nonprofits that don't have people sitting around with their feet on the desk. So just inviting them isn't enough. We have to meet them where they are and figure out what they need to be able to help us, and how can we help them, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to see us do more of that. Rachel, did you want to say something? And so maybe Deanna or Jeff or Cal, would any of you have any follow-up, reaction, further questions for us?
I would nominate Deanna to give us some closing comments.
Okay. I'm not sure there'll be closing comments yet, but
I won't be closing. I will be continuing to, as we go through this process, we'll be continuing to have our ears listening to what our community is telling us, and we appreciate the input that the Housing Commission spent today. So again, this is the first of providing input on our land use strategies and how to meet RHNA. We will be conducting a community meeting on August 14th, which will cover a similar topic so that we can reach out to our community members to hear from their perspective as well. So we'll be taking this input back. And I think there were some really good questions, comments brought up. I think more data that is needed for us to review and provide back some of the information that was requested. So I'm just looking at the questions that we went through. Yeah, happy to hear if anything more about for AFFH, which is new this year or new to this RHNA cycle, and other opportunities in order for us to combat, past practices and land use practices that have resulted in, segregation and other inequities.
Mm-hmm. I actually want to continue my comments because of what you just said, Deanna. I do think, again, it's sort of resource, I think, constrained, but when tenants are discriminated against, inclusionary is great. The ideal of integration in any given hallway is wonderful, but it also sometimes results in for-profit property managers not treating the BMR tenants well. And then who do they go to? I mean, they go to their property manager who's the one abusing them, or do they go to the city who is, resource constrained and or do they go to community legal services? I mean, they're really outgunned by the property managers and their slew of lawyers and time. So that's one thing that we could, I think we just really need to have more staff that can respond to tenants, discrimination or issues that they're facing. And then the other thing I think I mentioned is that given the way the tax credit financing and the income levels are structured in our region, I think it's incumbent on us to find a funding source to further subsidize some of the BMR housing so that it's affordable to the lowest income earners and lowest income residents in our communities. So those are two very concrete, not easy, but we're, as much as that's a challenge in this community, we also have the resources to solve that problem. So, Rachel.
Well, I am going to go ahead and say what I was going to say earlier, because I want to reiterate what I've heard, I think twice now, from the chair and from Commissioner Merriman in different ways, but with regard to the community outreach for this housing element update, I appreciate all the work that's going into it from the M group, from staff. I understand that it's a very time consuming and resource intensive process, and every city has their limits when it comes to that. Not that we can't improve on it, but I think it's clear to all of us on the commission that that's just not something that comes out of thin air. That takes a lot of work. And the same goes for, I was going to hold these comments until we had a conversation about the housing element work plan. This is a conversation about land use strategies, but I think the same goes for this. Any of these big idea strategies that we're talking about requires follow-up and staffing resources. And I know this is, we're talking to the wrong audience here, but hopefully you can bring this message back to our city council and just, you know, keep beating that drum that we understand as commissioners and we recommend as commissioners that if we want to follow up on programs like inclusionary, or like the chair just brought up, ensuring that, you know, tenants have recourse when they're clearly being manipulated by, you know, private property owners. Even if we're talking about rezoning, all of that stuff takes staffing and it takes time, and we've seen the result of the deficit in that in our city. And I know that all of our staff work hard on this, but you know, one person can only do so many things. So I just want to put my, you know, speak up for that as well, because I think that that is essential to every component of the housing movement.
I want to add something I forgot to say. So I'll raise my hand and call on myself. Another, you know, I mentioned the Sharon Park publicly owned land, but as has been discussed in the past, we have an aged tentacle-like main library in Burgess Park. And when we were considering upgrading it, the idea came up to put deeply affordable housing, particularly in that site, I think, for families above it. And I just want to bring that idea back to life, because the parking lots is a great idea, but I don't think we should just limit ourselves to the parking lots, because Burgess is a huge plot of publicly owned land right next to everything. And if not above the library, then some other little corner, there's got to be place for affordable housing there. And then the SRI property, I think we could zone that to be, to inspire deeply affordable housing through a partnership with a nonprofit housing provider who can draw upon tax credit financing, et cetera, et cetera. So Chelsea, I'm going to be quiet now.
So I just want to say that that whatever we do, if it's commercial land or federal land like USGS, there's going to be a bidding war. And we have to come really, if you think we can partner with some organization, we better come with big bucks, because we're not going to win. It's everything in the Bay Area is considered prime land. This is why my friend Grace moved to Hayward. Hayward's starting to be more expensive because it's so close to, it's literally across the bay. She had to move out to Pleasanton. Pleasanton got to be so expensive to move all the way to Antioch. She kept moving further out. So don't think for a moment that I'm saying that don't put everything that we're going to be able to get it. We are not going to be able to get USGS because it's federal land. And unless they're going to say, okay, you know, Menlo Park, we will give it to you, whatever the price you bid, we won't give to anybody else unless that's the case. It won't be. And, you know, and also the SRI land is a commercial land. You know, we're going to have to bring in big guns, big dollar signs just to get it. So this is why I advocate for public lands that we already own, whatever it is. If you don't think that the downtown parking lot is a good one, find something else, but then we wouldn't have to pay for it. As for the share, I don't know about the Sharon Heights corner you were talking about. But the one that you did mention is that Safeway Plaza. That's usually most plazas in the Bay Area are owned by developers or a group of them. And we're gonna run into the same situation. If we want to convert, we're gonna have to talk to them, and then we're gonna have to run into the same situation. You know, they there to make money, they would give us 15%, and then off they go. And I mean,
Kelsey,
yes,
I totally hear your point, and I totally agree with you. I think at this point we should probably just be offering, you know, things that we'd like to see on the table, and not really taking things off necessarily. But I totally hear you. I just think it's sort of a helpful exercise to see what would it cost to do it on a commercial property as compared to dedicating some land at Sharon Park as a way to assess whether or not we should, you know, which strategy we should take. But I 100% agree with everything you're saying. And I'll call on Nevada.
This is a quick comment to pick up on something you mentioned, Chair Grove, and that is just that we would really like to see the kind of specific housing policy expertise that Ms. Kaufman brings through her background, a very nuanced and deep understanding of what the long-standing issues are with housing elements. And I get it that it's like not a distinction that most members of the public might pay attention to, but there's a little bit of a difference between the kind of the plannerly exercise of it versus the using the policies to advocate for affordable housing. So I would just urge us to think through that a little bit, and ask, as I know that you already are, to try to be as really collaborative as possible across your different disciplines and your different levels of expertise there to really get the best of both worlds. So thank you.
Thank you. Deanna, I may have cut you off and taken us back to commissioner comments when you were still responding, so I want to give you a chance to continue responding. You were saying that you're hearing everything, you're taking notes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Grove. I don't have anything else to add. We're happy to address any questions that you may have after this conversation. But I think we have a good information, and as Jeff mentioned, we will be back before the commission, and we hope to see you at our community meetings too, so that you can be part of the community conversation as well.
Okay. Any other final comments from the commissioners? Okay, well then I think we'll say thank you very much, Deanna. Thank you, Jeff, for an excellent presentation. And we'll move on to our next item.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item is selection of Housing Commission Chair and Vice Chair. And we started this last time and we didn't get to the point where we had a motion or a second for any particular, for either position. We moved to wait until this meeting in the hopes that we would have 6 out of 7, and we actually have 7 out of 7 people. So that's awesome. So before we nominate chair and vice chair, I thought we could take a little bit of time just to discuss how we feel about it. Like, I think it's helpful if people sort of raise their hand and say, I'm interested in serving as chair or vice chair. And I'll just call on Nevada. Oops, you're on mute.
I'm not interested in serving as chair or vice chair. I will only add that I believe I'm maybe the senior with respect to tenure commissioner here. So I would just offer a little bit of history, if you will, that we are a volunteer. This is a volunteer position, and that our Housing Commission has, I think, done a good job of, while we may not always agree with one another, I think we represent our city well in terms of how we choose to disagree and how we choose to take up concerns. And one of the things that I think has worked well for us is sticking to a little bit of rhythm with respect to the order in which people have taken on the role of chair, which is usually after observing and getting a sense of what's happening for a year or maybe two, and working with some of the more tenured folks to have their opportunity to lead. And I think it's good if we can give each other that opportunity to lead and cycle through that. The exception to that kind of general dynamic that I've observed, we did have Michelle Tate. She was chair for 2 years in a row with Meg McGrath as vice chair. And I think with that, it was really that she had an interest and was a strong chair. And there was a lot of kind of unfinished business where she had kind of started something and wanted to see it through. And of course, there was consensus from other commissioners that that was an acceptable way to go. So, you know, we've seen a couple different dynamics play out. And that's all I have to share, which is really just informative for folks that are newer.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Does anybody else want to comment? Heather. Oh, you're on mute.
Mute. I was looking for the little hand. I just wanted to, mine is more just a point of order. Commissioner Merriman mentioned the way the historical rhythm of how commissioners are, I know in other organizations I've been in, and you may probably covered this last time, but it was my first meeting. You are vice whatever position for X period of time, and then it's pretty common to become main position for X period of time, and then that's kind of like a sort of a training position, and then is that how it usually goes?
In practice, yes. There's nothing written down that says it has to happen that way, but in practice, that is what's happened.
Okay, I was just clarifying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Lauren.
I would just like to say that I don't have a lot of interest in serving in either position right now, just because it's a period of great flux for me personally. And so I don't know that I could devote all of the time and effort that I need to the positions. But I also want to point out that this past year and a half has been really unusual, and we've missed a lot, or let me rephrase. I really hope that the past year and a half have been unusual, in that I don't want this to become the norm. I like meeting with my fellow commissioners in the same room and getting to interact with you on a personal basis. And I think that while we've been finding our footing during COVID-19, we missed a lot of meetings, and we have a different dynamic now while we're sitting in our own homes, residences, what have you, and are calling in from that place. So I just wanted to take myself off the board, as it were, and just make sure that we all give a little bit of room for consideration that these are strange times, and we unfortunately are not out of the woods yet. And so we may have to continue like this for a bit. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Chelsea.
I was being muted by the host several times. So I would like to make a statement to explain where I was coming from during the last meeting. and why I wanted to be chair. And if you may allow me to do so.
Please.
So a local lawmaker came home from Washington, D.C. during Thanksgiving last year. And she wrote to me a wonderful email thanking me for running for city council and that she was sorry for the loss. When Chairwoman Grove nominated herself to be chair of this commission, the one thing that came to my mind is what this congresswoman said to me, because she was glad that I ran even though I lost. She said, the loudest voices at election time are not those powered by multi-million-dollar budgets, but rather a singular voice of selection uttered by a citizen as a ballot is cast. That one voice echoes like an explosion in a canyon. So let me say again, that one voice echoes like an explosion in a canyon. And that was what running through my mind the entire time. Even I knew very well that I would not have the vote to win when I nominated myself. Nor do I even realistically think that I will have the vote to win this time around. My issue is that, first of all, I want to address something that Ms. Horst said last time. She said that Chairwoman Grove deserved another year due to COVID, the pandemic last year. And I disagree. And I disagree because that is not a good reason to be chair again. If anything, we do not stop working for the Menlo Park residents just because of a pandemic. If anything, we ought to work more, harder for them. And to have all of these cancellations of meeting, I know because I get emails saying that, you know, the meeting's canceled, things like that. I was on the list to be notified. And so that to me isn't a good reason. Secondly, everyone here knew at least, everyone here knew at least since last year that approximately 3,000 units allocated by RENA that we have to look into. And yet I had seen no assessment done until Ms. Chow told us to do it at the last meeting. I just feel like the commission wasn't doing its job. Why not? Why wasn't this even discussed in advance, so that when Ms. Chow gave her presentation last week or Jeff gave us presentation this week, that we will prepare? We ought to have done that. And I just feel like the commission did not do its job last year, and it was chaired by only one person. When we weren't preparing for it, I see this as a failure. And it's not a reason to give somebody a chance and say, okay, you can have another year so that we new folks can learn from you, because there's nothing to be learned from, because there wasn't anything done. That's the fact. And Chairwoman Grove, I mean no disrespect, but I have to say I was disappointed. And I had mentioned last time that this was the reason why I joined the Housing Commission, because I wanted to make a difference. And I believe just because I'm new, I'm still can make a difference, because I have the foresight, I have ideas that I can push forward, that I can help us move along. It's about action, not talk. That's just it. And I need this commission to do more than just, talk about having ad hoc committee, talk about prioritize, different things, what's important. I mean, that's just secondary if we don't have a strategic planning in place. And to me, we need that.
Thank
Look,
you.
and lastly, full closure. I did not spend this last month talking to anyone to receive their support for today's vote. I did not talk to anyone and ask anyone to support me or speak on my behalf today. Just full disclosure. And I know the EBMR program very well because I am the recipient. I had been on the waiting list for more than 20 years. I know what it was like. I know what it is still like being a BMR resident. I know, and while everything that I'm doing right now isn't for my benefit because I do have a home now, but I look around the people that I know and love and just people that I just meet from at church to feel the pain. And I just want to make a difference. And I believe that I do provide a different voice. I come from a different background, different economic status, and I can give a different perspective. And I think this is something that the commission needs. So, I understand about loyalty, we know about loyalty, right? We hear a lot about in the national politics nowadays, right? Loyalty. And I hope that if you support me because you think it's the right thing, not because out of loyalty to any person, because after all, the only loyalty we should have is a loyalty to the people of Menlo Park. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for giving me the time.
Thank you, Chelsea. And I am very, very glad to have your voice on this commission. And I think that the job of the chair is to make sure that all the voices are heard. And I am particularly glad when I hear yours. I really appreciated your story. I appreciate your commitment to the parking lot idea. So thank you very much. And I'm super glad you're here. Does anybody else have something else to say? If not, I do, but I'll wait. Okay. So last time I nominated, are we supposed to, yeah, we could go to public comment. I see that there is a member of the public who wants to make a comment. So why don't we do that, and then we can continue discussing and take some motions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will bring up our timer.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, for members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, please use the raised hand feature, and I will then have the ability to unmute your microphone. Our first public commenter will be Lynn Bramlett. And you should
Hello, everyone again. So I just have a few brief comments. One is, first, this clearly seems to be a contentious issue, and I hope that you can all resolve it in a way that promotes harmony across the group with, of course, respect for different voices. It does sound as though the data point for Michelle Tate was a little different in that, and I don't normally follow this commission. Actually, I'm just as interested in the safety and environmental justice elements that we haven't really heard much about yet. But it sounds as though in the past, Michelle Tate and her vice chair, there wasn't any disagreement about that. Whereas tonight we do have disagreement. And I did actually look over the number of meetings, and I have to say I agree with Chelsea about, I think it was coming, the numbers, and, it's been talked about. And I have to say, I've been very puzzled why so many meetings were canceled over the past year. It seems like no time to cancel meetings. And actually with Zoom, attendance has really increased. I mean, the city council members will say that. So, we have a dispute, you have an existing process. My tendency is if you have a process, it's best to follow it, or there can be all kinds of later reasons given why, no, I think I should be the chair for so many years and so forth. But it's my heartfelt hope that you can all resolve this in an amicable way, for the good of the harmony of this group. And I have to say, I've been very impressed overall with the comments tonight. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bramlett. And just one more call for any additional public comment on this item, item D3. And not seeing any additional comments, I will return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you still hear me? One of my earbuds died, so I want to make sure I'm still okay. Great. So so last meeting I did nominate myself to serve as chair for another year or year minus a month or whatever it would have been. Because we're in the middle of the housing element, I think it's absolutely important that we not lose any momentum. And I found as a new chair and as a vice chair that there is a learning curve with the cycle, the staff resources, what is possible and how to make more possible. I mean, it takes a lot of work on my part to track what we've been working on, what we've postponed, and to make sure we bring it back at the right time. And I found my rhythm, and I think I'm doing a good job. Regarding canceling meetings, again, that's a staff resource thing. We don't want to have a meeting if we don't have a necessary agenda. We don't want to just take up staff resources, writing a staff report, getting it reviewed by a bunch of people on staff, and then bringing all of us together to do something where we could all go watch a webinar together, and we don't need a public meeting to self-educate. One of the meetings we canceled was the night of a Color of Law workshop, so everyone was invited to participate in that, which is extremely relevant educational content. And there was nothing that was necessary to be done that night. So there were reasons for the meetings that were canceled, and there was, no harm done other than it would have been great to have all the staff resources we need so that we could continue making progress, but that wasn't the case. I also want to talk a little bit about what this commission has done in the last few years. After many, many, many years of having 10, 15, $20 million in our below market rate housing fund, we now have a small buffer left because we revised the way we issue our notice of funds available to be over the counter, to allow for programs, to allow for preservation as well as production, things that advocates have been asking for us to do for a long time. And I am so appreciative of having Rhonda on staff because she knows the ins and outs of all of this. And she was able to say, yeah, we can do that. Whereas that wasn't always what we heard from staff previously. So we issued a better NOFA, we used a better process, we got 3 great applications, we awarded funds, and we will now have 14 low-income apartments on Coleman Avenue, which is in the Menlo Park City School District, thanks to that NOFA. We will save 20 seniors who are very low and extremely low income and live in Belhaven from unhealthy living conditions through the partnership with Habitat for Humanity, who's going to help repair their homes and preserve them. And what was the third one? Oh, and Midpen is going to explore building 12 below market rate affordable homes to purchase and possibly set up a community land trust to hold them. I think that's astounding. And let's see, we have a great work plan where we really I give a lot of credit to former Commissioner McPherson, who really encouraged us to focus on a handful of things rather than take on a whole long list of small things, and to John, who encouraged us to go for big swings. Our work plan is strategic enough that I can tell you what's on it off the top of my head. We are focused on the NOFA, which we did. We're focused on educating ourselves about community land trust, which we have done, and we have more that we can do. We've focused, a priority was to come up with a really robust ADU program. and to improve our outreach to monolingual Spanish speakers, and finally to get some extremely low income housing in West or Central Menlo Park, which is what we've been talking about, and we have our opportunity in front of us with the housing element. So I think we've gotten a lot done, and I offer to be chair for another, at least another few months. I was thinking it's just easiest to go with the cycle and stay a year, but another thing that makes sense is to just remain as chair until we file our draft housing element, which would probably be the January meeting, where we would vote for a new chair and vice chair. But you know, I'm fine with moving on if that's what the group wants to do. So that is my little spiel, and I'm going to call on Rachel, and when we're done discussing, we'll ask for motions and nominations, and then we'll vote. And we're going to do chair first. We do a motion, a second, a vote, and then we'll do the vice chairs after that.
Okay, you kind of just clarified for me what I was going to ask, because it sounds like we are going to do nominations again for clarity, because I can deduce that the nominations remain the same, but we have not discussed if there were other nominations. Okay.
Right.
So I don't have any comments other than this is not going in the order that my mental order was in, which was that we would do the nominations and then speak to it. So so let me try to reverse that. I spoke at the last meeting, so my comments remain intact. They're the same, but I also would support the idea of either remaining as it is now with the current chair and vice chair, or just the current chair, and through the end of this year, because of this, you know, the discrete nature of this project that we're working on called the housing element. So I think that that would be sensible, a sensible conclusion, because the bulk of the work that we're doing will take us through the end of this year. So just to put that out there for consideration. Or second that consideration, I suppose. And also, I am going to wait until we do the nominations.
Okay. So I guess I'm going to ask for Mike. Coach me through this again. Do we have, I think, 2 people who would like to be nominated. And now I call on a motion to nominate one of the 2, and then we vote on that one. And if that one wins, we're done. And if not, we move on to the next one. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly that, Madam Chair. So we would, the first nomination, we would take a vote for that. And if that individual has the votes for that specific either chair or vice chair, which we will do individually, we will then, you know, move forward with that individual. If they do not have the votes, then we would seek a nomination for another individual.
Okay.
So exactly what you said, just clarify.
I said it right. Okay. Then I'm going to call on Heather, who I think had her hand, she had her yellow hand up before.
I was a little bit confused because I know we had talked about this last time, but we kind of banted ideas about. Karen, you were offering to stay on through January. Rachel, were you wanting to be chair as well, since that is the next, what has happened frequently? I know we're not tied to that, but I'm just trying to get the nominations in order.
If you're chair or vice chair?
Right, for chair.
If you're asking whether I was going to nominate myself, I am not going to nominate myself. No, I am not promoting the idea of nominating me as chair.
Okay.
Lauren?
Sorry, after a year and a half, I'm still not used to unmuting myself. So I actually thought that I don't know what order we should take this in, but it sounds like there are two different proposed tracks that we have to figure out if we either want to switch chairs or stay with chairs now, or take on this discussion after the housing element. And I have to say that in the past, I've been a little bit uncomfortable with picking chairs and vice chairs with the fiscal year, just because new folks come on and they don't know us as well. So it's harder to get everybody a standalone vote rather than having people just follow suit, though intelligent people will always form opinions as they so choose. So I think that there's great opportunity for either of these things. I just wanted clarity on whether we were making this decision tonight or down the road.
I think I'm proposing a potential other motion, which is to defer the transition of chair and vice chair to the next chair and vice chair until January, after we've submitted our draft housing element. So that's another motion that someone could make.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you for clarifying. Nevada, your hand is up.
I just wanted to ask Commissioner Pimentel if he was interested, just as we hadn't heard from him.
Thank you, no, and I'd like to make a motion, if we could, to call the question.
And
Please do.
I'd like to move Karen Grove for our chairperson. Is there a second?
Second.
Should we have a vote?
Yes. Thank you for the motion. And the second. Mike, go ahead. Who was the second?
Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
Commissioner Leach, and we have a motion by Commissioner Pimentel to nominate Commissioner Grove as the next chair, and I will call for a roll call vote. So Commissioner Bigelow.
Aye.
Commissioner Leach.
Aye.
Commissioner Merriman.
Yes.
Commissioner Nguyen. You were on mute, Commissioner Nguyen, if you don't mind.
Nay.
Thank you. Commissioner Pimentel.
Aye.
Vice Chair Horst.
Aye.
And Chair Grove, you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the motion passes 6-1 with Commissioner Nguyen dissenting.
And what did we just vote for? We voted for another.
Chair.
Okay.
For the chair, yeah.
Regular,
So
not.
For the next year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, through the same cycle. Yeah, we didn't change the cycle. Okay, now I would like to call for nominations for a vice chair. And I would actually like to just nominate Rachel, because in the same spirit that I offer my services in the spirit of continuity and keep the momentum up, I would appreciate working with Rachel again. And yeah, look forward to next July nominating Rachel to be chair and the next person to be vice chair. So that is my nomination. Do I have a second?
Yep, I second.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. And I will go ahead and call for a roll call vote. Commissioner Bigelow.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Leach.
Aye.
Commissioner Merriman.
Yes.
Commissioner Nguyen.
Nay.
Commissioner Pimentel. Commissioner Pimentel, could you repeat? I didn't catch that.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
Commissioner Horst,
Aye.
Commissioner Grove.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes 6-1 with Commissioner Nguyen dissenting, and I'll return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. It is getting late. I think we can finish really quickly if we all have the stamina to keep going. Yes? Raise your hand if you don't. Okay, sorry. I saw a bunch of, I take that as yes.
what else is on the agenda, may I ask?
Just reports and announcements, ad hoc committee updates, commissioner updates, future agenda items, and staff updates. Those go quick.
Is there anything that is critical for the people of Menlo Park to hear tonight?
So let's just go through it real quick. I'll just call for it. Ad hoc subcommittee report, I think it's useful to give a brief report on that. Rachel or Lauren, would you like to give that? Go ahead, Lauren. Are you pointing at Rachel? I mean,
Absolutely. I did the last one. So
okay.
Rachel, it's yours.
All right.
The BMR ad hoc subcommittee has been meeting on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. We are working on a variety of items. They are all listed in a spreadsheet we're working through. We're organizing the items by level of difficulty, staff resources required, and by the nature of the change. So whether it's an administrative change or a change that needs to be brought forth for a housing commission decision or potentially even higher, city council decision. We are homing in on the recommendation that is the most urgent and the from our perspective, and the heftiest topic to bring forth for housing commission discussion. And we will be bringing that forward in September. I'm blanking on the date.
Mm-hmm. At our September meeting, the first Wednesday in September.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's all for our ad hoc subcommittees. Commissioner updates? None. Future recommendations for future agenda items other than the housing element? Okay, seeing none. Staff updates and announcements?
No staff updates or announcements. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I adjourn the meeting at 9:40. How was that, John?
Expeditious. Good night.
Thank you all.
Karen, thank you.
Thanks. See you next month.
Thank you.
See
And
y'all.
welcome to folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.